Today I'm going to be watching this video. It's called Nobody Talks About These Strengths of Australia. I've watched a lot of videos talking about the different strengths of Australia, the different good things about the country. So interested to see the things that nobody talks about. Let's watch this and you can tell me what you think about these as well. Let's watch.
Every country has its pros and cons. Some countries have more pros, some have more cons, but no country is perfect. After I had traveled Australia for 1 year, I would like to share my thoughts on what I think Australia does better than my country of origin, Germany.
It's an
Number one,
interesting
how
comparison.
people talk to each other. In Australia, it is most common to address someone with their first names. Family names do not matter that much. I have seen letters from authorities like the council beginning with Dear Molly instead of Dear Mrs. Smith. When I opened my bank account, I had the appointment with a girl just a bit younger than myself. When I went out the office, there was an old man waiting outside for her to call him in. She said to him, "Hello Arthur, how are you doing?" That felt so strange to me. I couldn't imagine what kind of relationship these two would be having that this young girl would dare to address this old man with his first name. In Germany, I couldn't really think of a lot of situations where a young lady would address an old man with his first name. Even when you're in hospital and you have heaps of time to make friends with the nurses, they are most likely to still address you with your family name. "Hello, Mr. Smith, how are we doing today?" That creates such a cold distance between individuals.
That's true.
It is very common in Germany that when you work for a company for 2 years, that you don't even know your boss's first name. In Australia, no matter where you go or who you get to know, everyone is immediately your mate. Of course, there are black sheep, but you get the general idea. The downside to that, for me personally, is that you can never know who is your actual friend. In Germany, it takes a long time to really make friends with someone, but once you're friends with him, you know that he will try to move mountains for you. Number two.
That's an interesting comparison. I never really thought about that one as well. Do you notice that in Australia? Is that the case in all of these instances, like interactions with different organisations, hospitals and so on? Do they address you by your first name always? Has that always been the case in Australia? Is that like a relatively new thing? Because being from the UK, they still use Mr. whatever, and it's very formal. It's not very personable. I like the Australian way, especially if you're in a situation like being in hospital or something. I'd much rather they call you by your first name.
That might sound a little surprising, but school uniforms. If I were to wear school uniforms back in the day when I was still a kid in school, my life would have been a lot easier. When I went to school, I got bullied on a regular basis for years and years. And no, I'm not asking for anyone's pity, I'm doing just fine. Back in the day, my parents were only able to get me second-hand clothes. When the new PlayStation 3 came out, guess who got a used PlayStation 1 for Christmas? But I was happy with what I had. I liked my clothes. I enjoyed playing PlayStation 1. But only my classmates seemed to have had a problem with me being poor. And of course, they were picking on me for the clothes that I was wearing. I remember the time where you were only cool when you wore soccer shoes as your everyday shoes, without the spikes obviously. And the coolest shoes that you can buy were these Nike 90s.
Oh yeah,
Obviously,
I remember
my mom
those
wouldn't
ones.
have enough money to buy me those. But we went to Deichmann anyways, which is a big German shoe chain franchise. Every town has one. And Deichmann has their own home brand called Victory. They were copying designs of famous shoes, make a few adjustments and sell them cheap. And so it was that I didn't get Nike 90s, but Victory 70s. I personally was so proud. I loved those shoes. But you can imagine my schoolmates' opinion on them when I brought them to school. So yeah, that's a very personal reason of why I would prefer school uniforms over plain clothes.
That's a very interesting, I think there's a debate to be had there. It's very interesting observation. Being from the UK, we had school uniforms, so we wear the shirt, jumper, tie, black trousers. But there's good points and bad points. Yeah, it puts everybody on the same level. But the thing with having uniform is, for my school anyway, you had to go to a certain supplier, so there's a set cost. If you didn't have uniform, you could maybe go and buy like a cheap shirt and cheap trousers, so maybe less of a burden for the parents. But in this case, when it comes to things like bullying, yeah, I can definitely see the benefits. It means like stops kids coming in expensive shirts and jeans and so on and taking the piss out of kids who can't afford those things. But even with the uniform, you still have to buy shoes, bags, things like your hairstyle can be things that can be used against you. I've seen that definitely when kids would come in with like the 4-stripe Adidas shoes and be bullied and things. It was really sad. And Yes, and tell me what you think about that. I think it's an interesting debate on whether uniforms are better than not for a variety of reasons.
I don't know if there is an official term for these things, but I call them twist lids. Some glass bottles, I think mainly beer bottles, they have a lid that you can just twist off, so you don't need a lid opener but your bare hands. You can even easily just twist the lid back on the bottle and put it back in the fridge. Not that I knew why anyone should do that, apart from maybe when you get spontaneous diarrhea and you want to get your beer back in the fridge before you go nuke in the bathroom. As I have mentioned in previous videos already, there's so much technology that I have discovered in Australia that Germany, meanwhile, appears to me like a medieval country. To my next point, number 4, digitalization. In Germany, you have to work yourself through a huge stack of paperwork for pretty much anything. In Australia, you can transfer your car insurance by just updating your car details in an app and you're good to go.
So
in
easy.
Germany, they would send you a new contract via mail that you would have to fill out and sign and send them back. Because in Germany, a contract is only valid when it's physically signed. It is getting better slowly, but we are still far away from being as digital as Australia. Another thing is that
yeah, so that's interesting in itself, because you think about Germany, you think about how they are so known for like engineering and technology, and that you would think, and there's there's similarities with somewhere like Japan as well. Both of these countries are very forward thinking or very leading when it comes to engineering, discipline and so on. But what I know is, like, for the populace, when they're dealing with things like this, there's so much paperwork, so much bureaucracy. It's really cool to see Australia is very far ahead in that respect. Is that something you can relate to? You feel yourself? Do you know that? Like things like insurance, is it very easy to handle all these things? Is there anything that still requires a lot of paperwork in Australia?
In Germany, cash is king. And I know this is a bit controversial. Of course, I see the benefits of cash, but also the benefits of card. And Germany is a bit too cashy, in my opinion. When you take the bus, you either pay the driver with cash or you show him the ticket for the month that you have previously purchased somewhere. When you go to a restaurant in Germany, it's very unlikely that they accept card. It didn't happen just once to me that I forgot to bring cash to a restaurant, so I had to leave a deposit like my ID, go off, find an ATM and bring the money. So if you go to a restaurant in Germany, make sure that they accept card before ordering something. The other extreme is that in Australia, a lot of restaurants do not accept cash. But at least they warn you with a sign at the entrance about it. In Germany, they don't. I think they should just leave the choice to us whether we want to pay with cash or card. That's the end of this video. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I completely agree. There should be a choice. A lot of people prefer to use cash, and that's a very interesting debate. We see that being talked about a lot today, with things like moving towards like a digital currency. And it's a big debate. Is cash better? Is using digital means like card or e-wallets and things, are those better? I guess they've both got their benefits, but I feel like rather than going all in on one, they should just have that split and allow people to use what they want, give people the choice. Tell me where you stand on that side of the debate. How do you see that in Australia? Like he mentioned, some places don't accept cash. Is that the case? Have you ever been to a place like that? Does it cause a problem? But yeah, interesting points. Some of those things, yeah, definitely not heard. And tell me what you think about those. Thanks.